Well, yesterday morning's horrific attack on Jews attending a synagogue in Manchester has sent shockwaves across the country and across the world. And unsurprisingly, public anger in the UK is growing. Now, the alleged attacker, 35-year-old Jihad al-Shami, entered the UK from Syria as a young child before being granted British citizenship, aged just 16. Now, many would argue that he should never have been here in the first place, and he's not the only one. Just look at a string of Islamist terrorist atrocities in this country. The 2021 Liverpool terrorist, born in Iraq. The 2021 terrorist who assassinated Sir David Ames, his parents were from Somalia. The 2020 Reading terrorist, born in Libya. The 2020 Streatham terrorist, his parents came from Sri Lanka. The 2019 London Bridge terrorist, his parents came from Pakistan. The 2017 Manchester MEN terrorist, his parents came from Libya. The 2015 Leytonstone terrorist, born in Somalia. The 2013 Woolwich terrorist who assassinated Lee Rigby, his parents were Nigerian. The 2007 London-Glasgow terrorist bombers, their parents came from Iraq and India. And the 2005 supposedly homegrown 7/7 terrorists, well, 3 of them had parents from Pakistan, while the 4th was born in Jamaica. Notice the trend? We cannot afford to continue ignoring the blindingly obvious pattern. Why are these people in our country in the first place? So many of the evil terror attacks that we see being committed in our country are committed by first or second generation migrants. These attackers hate our country, they hate what we stand for, and they hate the Jewish community. Who could be next? That's the question I think we all want to ponder this evening. Now, the left would have you believe that anybody in this country can become British and anybody can become English the moment they step onto our shores and get hold of a few documents. But as the respected writer Gareth Jones argues in his book, The Culture Transplant, what we've actually been doing in this country and across the West is importing people from radically different cultures who retain the beliefs, the attitudes, the cultural practices, and yes, the propensity for violence from their home countries. Isn't this why we also had to deal with the rape gang scandal in this country? Because we had imported masses of people from rural Pakistan, where clan-based networks and the abuse of people who are non-Muslim is considered acceptable. Sadly, this is now being compounded by our insane open borders policy. Under Keir Starmer and the Labour government in the last week alone, we've imported another 2,000 illegal migrants from God knows where, who think who knows what. More than 800 arrived within 24 hours last Saturday, nearly 200,000 since 2018. We don't know who they are, we don't know where they're from, and we don't know what they believe. Why on earth is the government doing this to our own people? Almost every terrorist attack now is a reminder of this fact, that we are importing people who hate who we are, who cling to totally different cultures, identities and outlooks, all of which is making our own culture, identity and social cohesion harder to maintain. All of those inherited cultures, all of those traditions, all of those views and attitudes are passed down from one generation to the next. We can either keep ignoring this awkward reality or we can do something about it, which would mean radically reshaping our country and its future around people who have deep roots and ties to this country, who are genuinely integrating, who are calling time on mass uncontrolled immigration and who are doing whatever is required to fix our borders. And, most of all, who are launching an all-out assault on radical, violent Islamism. I've had enough of all of this, haven't you? Well, to discuss exactly what I've just laid out, I'm now welcoming journalist, author and historian Rafe Haydel-Mankoo to the show, a friend of the show, a friend of the channel. Rafe, what I've just said is going to be controversial, perhaps, in Westminster, London, Cambridge, Oxford, Brighton. But to many people out there in the country, it's a statement of the obvious, is it not?
Exactly, and I'm so pleased that you did that opening monologue, because I actually was going to say just the same thing, because actually linking the terror activities, all the major terror activities, or most of them that we can name, and as you have named, including Sir David Ames and so forth, are linked to our asylum and our immigration system. And it's not surprising, of course, especially if you're an asylum seeker who's come here, the children, just because you're born here or you came here at a young age, doesn't mean that you're going to escape the trauma and the violence that your parents may have experienced in terms of your upbringing. Then we know that they're more prone to violence and to terrorist activities than you would find from the native homegrown population. And of course, they bring their culture with them. I mean, look, for heaven's sake, there are English communities in Dubai that, naturally carry on British traditions, and in Spain and in the south of France. It's not racist. It's very much part of the human condition to retain the character, the traditions, and the religion and others of your homeland. There is a fundamental issue here that we are too afraid to discuss. There are almost 45,000 people on the MI5 terror watch list. Over 90% of them are Muslim, huge number of whom are actually first generation or second generation British Muslims. That's 1 in 100 people. To put that into context, that's larger than the size of Hamas on October the 7th when they launched their attack on Israel. That's larger than the size of ISIS's forces in Iraq in 2014 when they launched their terrible attack there. It's half the size of the current full-time serving British Army. These are shocking statistics. And as the Islamic population grows, it's only going to get larger. Added to that, of course, 9% of Muslims in this country have admitted to being jihadis or supporting terrorism. That's around 350 to 400,000 people. It's forecast about in the next 25 years, the Muslim population of this country will double or treble. So yes, it is of course true that the majority of Muslims in this country are very well adjusted and integrated into our society, and that should be celebrated. But the reality is, it's not a fringe minority that express these extremist views, as many on the left and in the media and political class would have you believe. It's a very sizable majority.
Indeed, and I remember surveys just after the October 7th attacks finding that somewhere between 30 and 40% of British Muslims were actually expressing support for Hamas in some form or other. And I think there was a large share who openly expressed support for the attacks themselves, although we should underline that point that most British Muslims certainly reject the kind of violence and attacks that we've seen over the last couple of days. Rafe, can I just ask you a question? Because at the same time, liberal progressives in this country, civic nationalists, people who basically think you can become British, you can become English the moment you step foot on these islands and you get a piece of paper. I have always thought that is hopelessly unrealistic and adrift from what it actually takes to build a cohesive, high-trust nation where people are willing to support their strangers and they won't commit acts against that country. And the reason I just read out that list is because I think we have lots of people who can really only trace their roots back in this country maybe a few years, maybe one generation at most. Well, if you look at where we're going as a country, and I've put some of this data out on social media, by the 2070s, not long actually, it's only about 50 years, 40, 50 years, the foreign-born in this country, people born in other countries like Pakistan and India, Nigeria, and so on, they and their first-generation, second-generation descendants will represent a majority in the entire country. So where we're heading to as a country is a population with much weaker ties, with thinner ties. I mean, I think that's a problem. What do you think?
Yes, the fundamental question is, at what point does Britain stop being British? If it's only 40% white British, is it still Britain? And what are the common connections? What are the common bonds that unite a nation? Normally it's sporting events, it's music, it's culture, it's things like the monarchy and our institutions, it's pride in our history and our heroes. But if you've imported vast numbers of people who are not only not British, but come from vastly different, I would say culturally incompatible nations, then what unites us? In fact, what's going to happen when we get to that state is that I personally think the white British will become a minority in this country by the 2050s. This is based upon what Professor David Coleman, an emeritus professor of immigration, said would happen in 2010. He said 2066, but we've had so much immigration since then. We're going to be reducing ourselves to ethno-nationalist silos. We're already seeing it with white flights, where, of course, one of the reasons property prices are increasing so much in the southwest is because of this exodus of white British people away from the cities. So this segregation is already happening. So this, you know,
Okay.
this is the dark side of this is the dark side of diversity. And as we know full well from all of the sociological studies, Muslims who live in segregated communities are more than twice as likely to become extremists. And
Okay.
these
Well,
segregated communities often act like petri dishes for the cultivation of cultural practices that should be abhorrent to Western civilization. Acid attacks, honor killings, you
sure.
had the rape gangs and so forth.